Podcast free. Christmas edition. No, sorry, not Christmas edition. Boop, cut that. Halloween edition.
Halloween, yeah, we're gonna be talking about some horror stories. So kids, be careful. Tim, welcome to the new episode, Halloween edition today. So we're gonna be talking about some horror stories. So kids, be careful. Tim, first story. Come on.
I've got so many of them, Steph. Okay, so as you know, I've worked in the industry a long time. And about 10 years ago, I was contacted by a client in the casino market in the US. I'm going to protect their name for obvious reasons, but they were a high-end casino. So they had all of the security you'd expect, good firewalls, good network detection. They had all the latest technology. And they contacted me because they had something strange going on in their network. And it transpired it wasn't what they thought it was. And actually it ended up being the fish tank. So I'm going to call this story The Casino and the Fish Tank. So what had actually occurred is they had a new supplier of a very large fish tank delivered into the foyer of the casino. And then after that date, they'd started seeing unusual activity on the network. So they checked all the usual things. They checked the firewall. They checked all the capabilities. And they really couldn't find out what it was. So they called me and a team in to do some forensic analysis.
Because of a fish tank.
They didn't know it was a fish tank. At that time, they didn't know what it was. They said that, they were expecting some sort of laptop or some sort of, phishing attempt. So we spent a couple of weeks tracking this down. And eventually what we found was there was a thermostat that was attached to the fish tank and it regulated the temperature. So because it was this low priority, non-network connected device, they thought it was, they hadn't really understood it. But when we tracked it down, what we actually found is the hacker had found a vulnerability in the thermostat system.
Wow.
They'd used that to move laterally across the network in the casino undetected because it was low, importance in terms of network traffic.
Like a fish.
Yeah, you could say it was a phishing attack. Yeah. But what actually happened is that the attacker used that to move laterally and attach to the high rollers database. So the actual prize for the hacker is they were looking to gain access to that database so they can get financial records, private and sensitive information, which they then used to draw the data back through the thermostat, which was connected to the cloud, because they were using that to update the fish tank and monitor the water temperature, etc., and in order, the materials for, the chemicals for the water. And they used that to exfiltrate that database, put it up into the cloud, and then ultimately get out of the internal network. So I think the moral of the story was that the hacker was caught, by the way. They did catch the hacker in the end. And whilst they had exfiltrated the data, all the clientele data was safe because, the federal services got involved quite quickly. But it was really interesting to think that they'd had all that investment, they'd spent all the money on the things that you'd expect them to, firewalls and IDSs and IPSs, security guards and physical CCTV. And actually it went silently undetected within their business. The moral for me was understand the supply chain and understand that vendor. It was a new vendor and they hadn't really done, what they did. Excuse me, my telephone's ringing. It's actually my wife. Sorry about that, Steph.
So going back to the fish tank. So never trust a fish.
Never trust a fish and always think about fishing.
The fishy.
What about you, Steph? I mean, have you got any similar horror stories?
Well, horror stories, but that's going to be from our side of things, like when we're looking at different networks and so on. So maybe not that fishy like yours, but so what I've seen is I was called to help with something strange was happening on a website, and the company was receiving phone calls from their customers about strange activity whenever they were accessing the website and so on. So I've been called to have a look, and trying to figure out what was happening. So I got access to basically the admin side of things to look at the logs. That's going to be the first thing I was looking at, and I was looking at the time. So like a time roughly a couple of days and I was checking what was unusual. What happened during that time. I looked for, the thing that might be something of interest. Yeah. So I was looking at it, and I was seeing that there were some plugins that have been installed recently, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And I looked at the plugins, and what I've seen is that the plugins, when I looked at the original plugin and the plugin that was installed, they were completely different. I mean, completely no, maybe not. I will say the end was different, if you want. Why I looked into this, because the file size was a bit strange compared to the original one, because they've had installed that plugin before, but the size was different. Okay, it could have been a new version or something like that. But anyway, that caught my attention. And so I went inside the code and looked at into the plugin, and there was a piece of code that was added. And that piece of code, what it was doing, it was basically redirecting users to another application. Yeah. And so I had a look at that application, and mostly I looked at the domain first. And what I've seen is that the domain got registered like a month ago. So again, very suspicious. Yeah. And of course, I was not going to go and click on anything like that. You need to protect yourself. Yeah, protect yourself. And so what I did is I looked at the piece of code, and I said, okay, so that got installed by someone who got the rights to be able to install the plugin. So I had admin rights the same way I had admin rights now to be able to visualize all this. So someone got access basically to an account with admin rights, able to install a plugin, and within the plugin to put a piece of code to redirect to another website. That other website, after investigating it, was basically installing malware on computers of anyone who was trying to log into that page. So that was kind of interesting. So of course, what we did is we cleaned it up. So we removed the plugin. That was one of the things. Then we also removed a piece of code in the page that was calling the plugin back. So they really put kind of an effort to be able to, even if you had, removed something, you will be able to reinstall it back automatically. So we removed all piece of code, and then we just monitored for a couple of days, and that's it. So you see, you can be going to any websites today, yeah. And what you need to look at is anything suspicious. If you get redirected to another website, don't click on anything.
Yeah, particularly tiny URLs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you get your email from the bank and saying, "Hey, can you click in here so you can get access to your account?" Never do that. So that was one in here in terms of like little findings in terms of a plugin installed on a CMS platform. So that was kind of interesting because they changed it. And the other thing that we found out is that the IPs that were connecting to that were coming from different places, different locations. So you already knew that they were using some kind of, VPN or whatever. So always coming from the east side of things. So that was the concentration of IPs being used for that. So again, another suspicious type of activity, and we were able to, to solve the issue. But for the customer, it was super scary because, getting calls all the time from the customer saying, "Hey, I'm getting redirected to that web page. What's going on?
Yeah.
Can I trust you?" and so on. So yeah, that's one of mine. What about you? Another one?
Well, as it's Halloween, I'm going to call this one the case of the digital ghost.
Okay.
So I was asked to come and attend a company who were an online commerce business, and they had high value products. And what was actually happening is they called us in to do some forensic analysis because they had a problem with their inventory system where it never seemed to be consistent. They seemed to have products that were in stock, they hadn't sold any, and then all of a sudden they were out of stock. And so products disappeared, and then they came back online after a few days. So really strange. So what we'd actually found is the threat actor had actually embedded a piece of code into their inventory system, very low-level piece of code. And what it was doing, it wasn't stealing any data, it wasn't exfiltrating any data at all, and it wasn't doing any lateral movement. All that code was doing was looking at certain products and changing the name of the product and changing the value to 0.
Okay.
At certain periods of the month.
Okay.
And then it reverted back. So we thought this was quite strange. What actually transpired is the threat actor was a gamer, and they were looking to try and get one of these exclusive consoles. And every time they tried to buy it, it was out of stock, because obviously everybody was interested in purchasing it. So what they'd done is they'd amended the code on those particular consoles, made it look like they were out of stock, whilst they were then going in and buying the products at a very low value, and then they were shipping those back out. And because it wasn't on the system and on the inventory, they didn't actually know they'd lost the stock. And secondly, they didn't actually, have the right opportunity. So looking and understanding the code within the application and the platform, was clearly the thing they needed to go and look at. But it was something that puzzled us for months, because we couldn't really understand, they're not stealing anything, they're not exfiltrating anything, there's no external access to the system.
Yeah.
It was merely this small piece of code that they'd managed to get into the code. What we did discover, it was an insider who'd actually helped plant that code in there. So there was a couple of things that came out of it. One was vetting the insider, who happened to work for a third party. 2, making sure you're doing proper vulnerability assessment of your code. And 3, doing the assurance of that and making sure you're doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, that change basically. That basically caused the interest in here. Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Steph, any more?
I have one. Yeah, that's an interesting one. This is where, by doing a research again for a bank, and we've discovered an application. Okay, an application that was basically the application that customers were using to connect to be able to connect to their bank accounts. And but there was something strange, when you have that feeling when you look at at your screen and you know that something's not right. And so what we did is we compared. Again, we're talking about code. Yeah. So we compared the two codes. We compared the code that we had for that application, which looked like really like the bank login, and another one we had, which is what basically the let's call it the original one. And because we thought, okay, maybe they have two different applications, maybe for redundancy, whatever it is, yeah. And looking inside, we found out that there was a connection being made somewhere else to a completely different set of IPs than the original one. So that kind of struck us again, and then we said, okay, that's a bit weird. And what we did is that we tried to understand where it was going. So what I tried a few things, and I got the application to crash. Yeah, so I got my 500 error message, and and so on. It was some piece of code that started appearing, like the Matrix. Yeah, and I'm like, whoa, what's that? So stopped that and looked into the code, or basically looked at what I had on my screen, and saw a couple of URLs. Okay. Of course, all these things I was doing that on a system that was completely, segregated and not even right. So it was not like, I'm gonna get infected or something. And I saw some URLs, and I said, okay, I'm gonna have a look, because again, being curious, I went to that URL, open. Okay, first of all, yeah. Again, I checked where it was coming from, a new domain, 5 months ago, registered with a Gmail account, something strange, yeah. And I had a look, and what did I see? Oh, Holy Grail, the Holy Grail of the hacker. Yeah, so this time is like the hacker forgot to secure his database that he was collecting. He was collecting basically all the username and passwords from the people that were logging on that fake web page, but he didn't secure that. So I had access basically to a whole database with username and passwords of all the users of the bank. So funny enough, in here is what happened is that by trying something and getting the application to crash, that exposed basically a set of URLs where I was able then to track down the database where everything was stored.
I'm presuming the bank then, gave you a nice fee for finding their vulnerability and fixing it for them.
Well, at least they were made aware of something happening that's a bit out of their control, because someone can always spin up something on the side. But to be able to have that data quite quickly, you can prevent people from trying. But it's all about. I think in here it's all about for the normal users is to check, basically, to check, are you on the right place? It's like emails.
Yep.
You get an email and it say, oh, you go, like I said before, it's like you click on the link because you're gonna go to the bank. I never do that. Yeah. And if someone calls you now, even now with AI, I was reading that this morning when I was coming here, is that they can completely, I mean, the guy who's gonna be talking on the other side could be a real, well, not a real person, but basically, impersonating a real person.
This happened to me recently, actually, where I did have a phone call which was masquerading from the bank. And it was AI generated, it transpired, because I did phone the bank and explain to them. And they never asked for details. And this person said that there'd been a compromise of my account and they were looking to, to access it. And they were asking me for password details. Clearly, as a security person, you'd never given them that. But and that was an AI generated voice, which sounded really real. So very polite. It sounded great.
For me, it's like you get an email, don't answer the email, don't click on anything on the email. If you get a phone call, always call back and call the number that you have.
The correct number, not the number that's phoned you on, because they spoof that often.
Exactly. So, like I say, be vigilant. There are ghosts everywhere. And in terms of like the moral of the story is that you need to obviously monitor that kind of things, but there's not much you can do because anyone can spin up something like that. It's just don't know that there is something happening. And while I was doing that exercise, there was not only one website, because after that, I've discovered 5 other websites that were doing exactly the same thing.
Wow. So it's pretty haunting then, isn't it?
Yeah.
So look, Stephane, I've enjoyed chatting today. We'd love you guys to share your stories with us. So if you have an interesting story about something that happened either in your current workplace or in the past, you don't need to necessarily share where you're working. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to share those stories for the rest of the community. Thank you very much.
It would be a Christmas story.
Maybe it'd be a Christmas story, yeah, or even a Valentine's story.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.